right. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to today's episode of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. This is dialogue number 16 with Juan Perez of Combatives Unlimited, and wouldn't you know it, he is there, and I sent him the invite. I think this is absolutely the first time that my dialogue partner has been on the ball. Not
Is it working?
Of course it's working, and it's not surprising at all. It's not even 3 p.m. and you're ready to go.
Military thing, man.
I think so. I think so.
So how
doing?
Are you? I'm good. Doing
All
really
right.
well.
Okay.
But
I don't know if it's my phone or your phone, but your volume's a little bit low. Can you do anything on that?
How's that?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So well, interesting that you should say it's a military thing, because that's actually where I wanted to start, right?
Okay.
Okay. I should say this, right? Actually, I wrote this, right? My guest today is a guy that I've greatly admired, mostly from a distance, because I see him only on seminar. And even though he and I are from the same Inosano lineage, we don't run in the same circles. So I said that to one of my students last night. He goes, "What do you mean by that?" I go, "Because Juan is a real man. I'm like a kid, a real tall kid, right?" Because I have to tell you this. I've admired you greatly from a distance, but I'm also a little bit afraid of you.
How? I mean, I've always admired the way you move. I've always talked about when I see you demo.
But it is precisely because I know that there's a fun side to you, but you're such a serious guy.
You know, the funny thing is, that is not the first time someone's told me that. Everyone says, "You always look so serious. Why don't you smile more?" and everything. I said, "I'm in a good mood. What are you talking about?"
Well, look. Okay. All right. So, everybody, this is Juan Perez of Combatives Unlimited in Jacksonville. Let's start here. I want to start with a fun thing. I'm going to test your movie knowledge.
Oh, God.
Okay. So, Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Okay. Back to Bataan.
I know what it is, but I haven't seen the movie.
Okay. Taps.
I've seen Taps.
Okay. Sandcastles.
No, I've never seen Sandcastles.
Okay. And shoot, I had a couple more, but I forgot to look them up. Anyhow, what I wanted to ask you, for military people like you, right? Mm-hmm. What of your generation, what's the favorite? What's your favorite military films?
Wow, my favorite military film. That's kind of hard. I mean, this is a good one. I remember my father watching old military movies. Yeah. And if I watched him, it was because he was watching. I had no choice, really, in the matter. But I mean, I actually enjoyed Platoon. I actually enjoyed what's the other movie? Saving Private Ryan. Okay. Stories. I really enjoy more stories about World War II and in Vietnam more than anything else. I love the history behind everything that happened during that time frame. So I thought I was going to be a history major at one time because I love the history, but then I found out there was some history I didn't care for very much.
Okay. Okay. And you mentioned your dad. So is your dad military also?
My dad did 22 years in the military, so he was prior service as well. I mean, he did the military, and he retired. And the one thing was, when he was in the military, I didn't want anything to do with the military, actually.
Really?
Yeah, really. I mean, he was the one that he took me to a recruiter when I was in high school. And I didn't want to go, but I went anyways because like he tells you what you're gonna do, you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So talking to the recruiter, just him and I, because he asked my father to step out. He asked me what did I want to do, and I told him I don't want to be in the military. I said if I did come in the military, I said I probably wanted to go either like military police or working in a hospital, something that I thought that would be beneficial on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And but I told him I had no interest in the military, and so he said, well, when you are, come back and see me. And during spring break, I went to visit my sister, and a friend of theirs, he came to visit them, and he was from the 3rd Ranger Battalion. He had on his, his uniform, all his awards on his chest, his beret, spit-shine jump boots or jungle boots. And I thought to myself, man, what does he do? And he was, I just started talking with him, and that's when I realized that's what I want to do. I want to go be an airborne ranger. And so I said, okay. I went back to the recruiter and I said, I know what I want to do. And I said, I want to be an airborne ranger, and that's all I want. He goes, you said you didn't want to do that. I said, I know, but that's what I want. You can't give it to me. I'm not signing up.
Okay. Now, was all of this in Hawaii?
No, I mean, actually, I left Hawaii. We finally left Hawaii and went to South Carolina. So I finished my last year and a half in Columbia, South Carolina, which it was a huge culture shock for me. Because all this time we were in Hawaii, Hawaii to me is home. But my father, while he was in the military, he traveled a lot. And he had bought a house in Columbia, South Carolina, bought some property out there. And so it was cheaper to live over there. So he finally took us all over there. And that's how I ended up there. And I could not wait to leave there. So I wanted to get away as far as possible from South Carolina at the time. And there's nothing wrong with South Carolina. It's a great place, but it just wasn't for me. And it was just such a change, a culture change from Hawaii to there. So yeah, and that's why as soon as I graduated high school that summer, I took off and went to basic training and stuff like that.
Okay. So, so airborne, is airborne something you have in common with Sifu and Asano?
Yes. I mean, Guru Dan, he was in the 101st Airborne. So, I mean, he was a paratrooper. And so, I mean, I did the same thing pretty much in the military. We jumped out of planes and stuff like that. So it was great.
Okay. So like I said, you're a real man. I'm just a kid in a man's body. So I'm going to use you to upgrade my knowledge of the military. Okay. You said Sifu Dan was 101st. You were 82nd. What are those numbers?
It's just a unit designation. My last 7 to 8 years while I was in the military, I was in the 82nd. I wasn't in the 82nd the whole time. I was in different locations. But the 82nd is just a unit that during before World War II, they actually converged these military units, and that's when the United States came up with this new way of delivering troops into the battlefield by jumping out of airplanes, to get them behind the enemy lines a little bit quicker. And that's what really short, make a long story short, is basically they made a unit and called it the 82nd Airborne. It was known as All-American, which it still is today. And basically it was just units from across the United States that formed this unit. And that was the 82nd Airborne. So at that time, the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne and some of the Ranger units were really the only airborne units in the military at that time, best of my knowledge, at least. Okay.
And what makes Rangers Rangers? Like what's special about them?
Well, now when the Rangers were during World War II, there was many different companies of Rangers. It's just not it wasn't just one, but it was a different various units. Now, when time changed after World War II, there was a need for these kind of soldiers, the Rangers. They worked small unit tactics, basically more than the regular infantry units were at that time. And so they wanted to expand this kind of, how would I say, a soldier that was just above the normal soldier, that would lead by example. In other words, just to put it in that format. And so they developed Ranger School. Back in the day, it was, you got assigned to a Ranger unit, and you were part of that Ranger battalion or that Ranger company. Eventually, the military made a Ranger School, which it basically weeded out, excuse me, the ones that could make it and the ones that couldn't make it. Now, you can be either Ranger qualified, or you could be in a Ranger battalion, Ranger regiment, which, you know, that there's a difference between the two. And so the Ranger School was to train other soldiers and leaders to go out within the military community and have these people within the jobs so they can help bring up the rest of the units. And so like in the 82nd, there's designated job positions or titles that requires that person to be, let's say, a Ranger qualified individual, right? So, you know, being a reconnaissance platoon, we call scouts or something like that. Yeah. Every squad leader in that platoon has to be Ranger qualified. If you're a key leader, you have to be Ranger qualified. That's just a requirement that you have to have. And then in the Ranger regiment, even if you're a key leader, again, you're going to be Ranger qualified. If you're an NCO, you're going to be Ranger qualified. Officer, you're going to be Ranger qualified. So you're given so much time to go to school. And if you can't make it, eventually they're going to get rid of you. But there's a difference between the Ranger regiment is more considered within the realms of special operations community. And then you have the 82nd, the 101st, and there's other infantry units, but they're not airborne qualified. Yeah. Or they're not airborne unit. They're not on jump status. Okay.
So you have airborne in common with Sifu Dan, and then you have Ranger Combatives development in common with Sifu Francis, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's pretty funny because Sifu Fong, you know, was interacting at that time with Max Mullins, who was in the 3rd Ranger Battalion. And Max Mullins was the one that brought him down to the Ranger Department to help improve the combatives program in the military. Before the combatives program in the military was, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, karate, judo, boxing. And the way it was, you had people that would come into a position and say, hey, you know, hey, Sergeant Dwight, you're now in charge of the combatives program. So you're going to put your flavor of what you like. You know, eventually you're going to leave that duty position, you know, and they bring in someone else that comes in, you know, hey, Sergeant Neil, you're in charge of the combatives program. He's going to put his little flavor into it. Yeah. And so as that goes on, it's always constantly changing, but it doesn't mean it's always for the better. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Because depending on that person's experience, that's either going to make it a functional combatives program, hand-to-hand program, or not, because there wasn't enough continuity in the program at that time. I see. And so throughout the years, it changed. And so that's what Max Mullins was trying to do, bring it to more, bring more continuity to it at the time, and also just make it more functional with what we were going on with the times. And as time went on, the type of weapons and the equipment that we carry changed. It was more, you know, it wasn't the M1 with a huge bayonet at the end. You can fight with it like before, like in World War II or something like that, or the old M16A1, which was a longer rifle, but you could put a fixed bayonet. You know, now with the M4s, the smaller weapon systems that, you know, elite units like the 82nd, the Rangers carry, you have optics, you have, you know, LED lights. I mean, everything on these weapon systems. So you can't really go banging these weapon systems around anymore like that. Right. So there was a change for this. Okay. So when I went through Ranger School, Max Mullins was actually my instructor, and he was actually my hand-to-hand combatives instructor when I went through Ranger School at the time. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah. So okay, so now bring it together for me. Your start and involvement in martial arts and the military career, was all that simultaneous? Did you start martial art as a kid before military? How did that work?
Well, I started martial arts as a kid when I was 5. My father was a huge boxing fanatic, which he still is today. And I mean, when it comes to the boxing experience, my dad was the one that kind of exposed me to that, the boxing. But he put me in judo, which was really the first martial art that I took when I was 5 years old. It was judo. Okay. And then eventually from judo to Shotokan karate. Okay. And I remember telling him that, you know, I felt like, you know, it wasn't something that was so realistic, in my opinion, at the time. And I remember.
How old were you when you said that Shotokan was not realistic?
Maybe 7 or 8. But I wasn't saying it wasn't functional. I think what it was in Hawaii, we had all these karate tournaments that we used to go to, you know, International Karate Federation and stuff like that. Yeah. And I remember going against a guy and he's coming at me and I kick and I was like, I thought I got the point, but he got the point. And I was like, wait a second, what's going on here? Why didn't I get a point for this? You know? So I got kind of frustrated with that I was like, okay, this is all point sparring. And I didn't like that. And my father was huge boxing and he knew I loved martial arts. He was a big Bruce Lee fan. And so that's how I kind of got exposed to it. And then my dad had a friend back home in Hawaii. His name was Eddie Pagan. And he was the one that actually introduced me to JKD, Filipino martial arts and stuff at that time. I was about 10 years old, close to 10 years old.
Did you say Eddie Pagan?
Eddie Pagan. Yes.
That's not the same Eddie Pagan that was in West Palm Beach, is it?
I don't know. That's the thing. The funny thing is when I remember as a kid, my dad would drop me off at this gentleman's house, you know, Seafood Pagan for me, almost every weekend, you know, or every other weekend. And he would teach me the moon sets, you know, back in the day. And I remember Sensei Yuri calling them out one day. I was like, hey, I remember that when I was a kid. Yeah. But when I was training with Sifu Eddie at that time, I thought to myself, this guy can't be real, because he would give me all the books of Bruce Lee's fighting methods and stuff like that. And we'd watch movies, and I just think to myself, this guy's not legit. There's no way he could be. But I loved the training. It was really good. I mean, he would literally just kick my butt in his backyard every weekend. And he had a scrub with the Jeet Kune Do kind of painted on to his scrub. And I thought to myself, that was the coolest thing I've ever saw. And a few years ago, probably about, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago or something like that. I remember I was sitting down with Guru Dan at the school. It was already late. We were closing and stuff like that. I was there for about a week or so. And I was just talking to him. And I told him, I said, you know, the first time I really got exposed to Jinfan, JKD, and Kali was back home in Hawaii with Eddie Pagan. And Guru just started saying, was he Puerto Rican? Was he in the military? I was like, yeah. Was he this? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, I know who he is. That's he trained with Richard Bastillo. And I was like, no way, that can't be, you know. And for me, I never mentioned it because I wasn't sure how legit he was at the time, you know. And he's the one that told me he had passed away. Yeah, you know, Guru Dan told me that, and I was like, but again, I don't know if it's the same one that was here in Florida. Yeah. But the last time I saw Eddie Pagan wasn't in Hawaii. The last time I saw him was in Columbia, South Carolina. So I don't know if it's the same guy or not. Oh my God. I mean,
what do you think? Because
it was mid to late 80s, somewhere around there.
Okay. I hung out with Eddie in 1992. That's when I would hang out in West Palm. So,
yeah. So I mean, it was at least mid 80s or something like that. Late 80s, close to around 86 or so, something like that, because I joined the military in 87. Okay. So that's when I went. So it had to be somewhere around there, because that was the last time I saw him. Okay. And but yeah, so I mean, I keep thinking to myself, is it the same guy? I just don't know.
Really interesting. Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, I don't know enough of Eddie's background other than that he trained with Sifu Richard. I know that that much. Right. But okay, so now you're as well known for who you are as for being tight with Burton Richardson. So yeah. when did you get back home to Hawaii and start hanging out with him?
Well, I ran into Burton. It was like, I would say early 96. Okay. Something like that. Early 96. And I met him, and I actually helped him do a seminar at Auburn University for Bruce Jolly. Okay. And his club that he had down there. Yeah. And it was because of that, you know, seminar and everything, I got to meet him and train. So I was the dummy, basically. I was the dummy. I got beat up and thrown around, and, you know, got stabbed with a stick and the knife and stuff back during that time. And I just thought to myself, wow, this guy, you know, he's really cool. And I was already getting ready to go back to Hawaii, because I'd re-enlisted to go back to Hawaii, because I wanted to get back there. I wanted to do some training. I just wanted to go back to Hawaii. And so I told him I was going back to Hawaii. That's where I was from. And he goes, well, you know, I'm not sure yet if I'm going there, but don't move there for me. I remember him saying that. I was like, oh no, I'm going no matter what. So I'm going.
Yeah.
But I remember when he first came out there, I had a small group of students that I was teaching at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, I said, look, you know, Sifu Burton Richardson, he's moving here to Hawaii, and he's going to open up a school here. I'm going to be one of his students. I highly recommend you guys come and be his students as well. And so, I mean, his first few students was myself and a couple of my students back in Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything. And ever since then, it's just, you know, I look up to him and everything he does. And I try to, I think what drew me to Burton was the way he thinks,
mm-hmm.
you know, because teaching combatives to the Rangers and stuff like that, to me, this has got to be more functional. This has got to be more realistic. I can't just do a drill.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of drew me to him, and how he started, you know, making his curriculum and what he was teaching, you know, and it really appealed to me. And the funny thing was, a lot of people don't realize this, but the word unlimited, I asked Burton if I can use the word unlimited.
Right.
You know, I said, because I didn't want him. I didn't want, you know, people, because we were so tight. I didn't want people to think I was trying to steal something from him or something like that.
Yeah.
But I had asked him, I said, do you mind if I use the word unlimited? Because, you know, I was like, I founded Combatives Unlimited back in '95 pretty much, but I wasn't using the whole word combatives and stuff. I was just using combatives or STRAC. I came up with an acronym called STRAC.
Okay.
And so Burton goes, yeah, not a problem. We were at a hotel in Hawaii when he said not a problem about that. And really, that's kind of the tie-in with the show, the affiliation that I have with Sifu Burton and stuff like that,
right.
Is the Unlimited and stuff like that.
Okay, so I gotta ask. I had. So you said that the name Combatives Unlimited, right? So let's say the idea that came up in '95.
Yes.
Okay. Now a bricks and mortar school. When did that happen?
The actual school itself?
Yeah.
Well, I would say it was probably when let's see, no, I'd have to back up. At the time, I just basically taught outside, or I taught at the ranger department to a small group of friends. And then when I went to Hawaii, I taught out of a park.
Okay.
That's very common there. And then myself, this gentleman named Bernard Chong, who was an instructor under Pendecker Paul Herman. Okay. So him and I, we got to, with another guy who did Taekwondo, and we rent this place out there. That was really, I would say, the first place that I kind of had the school was back in Hawaii at that location. We were right across the street from the beach. And Burton would come there and we do he'd do his monthly videos and stuff. And so really I would say that's the first place. But everywhere I went after that, I went back to Fort Benning, the Ranger Department, and I had a small club there. And it wasn't until after I retired that I actually established it here in Florida. Okay.
And that was when?
I retired in 2011, September of 2011.
Okay.
And I was teaching out of Luis Pajara's school at first because I was trying to find a location.
Right.
And it wasn't until like, I guess a year and a half later that I opened my own doors, I found a small warehouse. It was like 1,000 square feet. I was like, hey, I got to start somewhere. So I was there for like a year.
Yeah.
And I just needed a bigger place. And I found this place here. And I've been here ever since. I've been here for almost 5 years at this new location for 5 years. It's right off the interstate. So it worked out really good.
Excellent. I noticed on your website, it doesn't use the term Jeet Kune Do. It says instead that you are certified in Jun Fan Kung Fu. Is there a particular reason for that, or is that just what happened?
No, I think I probably need to update my website, to be honest. I mean, I've done it myself, and I haven't touched it in quite a while, to be honest with you.
Me too.
But no, I mean, it's not really, because people will ask me, I think sometimes, do you teach Jeet Kune Do concepts, or do you teach the original Jeet Kune Do or Jun Fan Kung Fu? And I'm kind of like, really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of, I was trying, and if it's not in there, it's because it was a typo on my behalf, because I try to tell people there is a curriculum, of Jun Fan Kung Fu A through Z, and I explain it, to me, I'm like, at least for me, And every year I think I'm always changing my opinion about it. You know, I look at JKD as something that should always constantly change, always improve yourself one way or another.
Right.
And I like the word concepts. I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think when this was like in 1982, 83, I was reading the Fighting Stars magazine that had Guru Dan in his an interview there. And I remember reading in that interview, Guru Dan, if I can remember correctly, I'm just trying to base it off what I can remember. He said he couldn't teach Jeet Kune Do. And I thought to myself, that makes no sense. Why can't you teach it? You were, Bruce Lee's training partner and the best friend. You should be able to teach it. But I think over the years, what I realized is that everyone's going to be different. You know, I can teach you this much, or I can teach you this portion of it. After this is really kind of on you, on how you take it and how you express it and which way you go with it, because we're all so different, as far as what we look at, our likes and dislikes of martial arts. Okay.
Do you think Burton Richardson would have been able to hack it in the military?
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is that everyone I think is very different. You wouldn't know until you're actually there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I look at soldiers that were under me, and I thought to myself, this guy's awful. He's not going to last. He's going to be out. And here I am retired now. And when I created my Facebook account, I created to maintain contact with my soldiers and my friends that were in the military. And I see some of these guys that are in now that are first sergeants and doing this, and they went to Ranger school. And I'm like, what, this guy? No way. How is that possible? But I'm so happy because, they really do have that intestinal fortitude to drive on and better themselves. And I thought to myself, man, this is great. And it's just like in combat. I mean, I remember soldiers saying, oh, I can't wait to get there. And, I'm going to do this, do that. And when they're there, it's not the case, and the one guy who's probably the most quietest guy and very nervous and going, oh my God, I can't believe we're going to do this. He's the one that turns out to be the brave one. So you really can't tell until you're in that position to say this person is going to be in the military or not in the military. And I guess this is a good story for you. When I was in high school, I had this counselor who did not like me. I don't know why, but he didn't like me. But I remember this guy, there was a girl that was crying. And I went up to her and I said, hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? She slapped me in the face. And I was like, taken back. I was like, what was that for? And the counselor walked in at the time that happened.
Yeah.
And he had suspended me. This was in my senior year. He had suspended me, and they didn't want to let me graduate. But I was already close to the end. I'd already passed everything. And I was like, what in the world? Why? I didn't do anything. Yeah. And I remember my mother going to the school and raising a storm saying, he's already passed everything. How can you say he's not going to graduate, blah, blah, blah. And I had to go in front of a school board. And they all asked me, what are your plans after high school? I said, I'm joining the military. I'm going to the military. And they said, you won't make it. You're not the type to be in the military.
Wow.
And I was like, what? I was taken back. I was like, they don't even know me.
Right.
But yeah, I graduated and I left right away and I went in the military. And it's so funny that when people ask me, what do you think of this person being in the military? You just don't know. It is for some people and it isn't, some people it isn't, and so it's hard to tell.
Did you ever find out why that girl slapped you?
No. But it was the craziest thing because I knew who she was. And I just went up because I saw her crying in like study hall. And I asked her, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? And she just slapped the heck out of me for it. And I was just like, wrong place, wrong time. So that's what happened with that.
My girlfriend slapped me one time because she says that I was too unemotional.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she slapped me. So I punched her in the arm.
Oh, okay.
I said, see, that's what happens when I get emotional.
Oh.
And then she broke up with me.
Okay. That's a reason. That's funny.
So listen, I want to ask you this because this is going to be the most cliche thing that I'll say to you.
Okay.
But obviously your military training is an integral part of your life. So
Yes.
it has to be in use in the way you operate, in the way you run your school.
You know, I, I would love to say yes. I'm not really sure if it is or not.
Okay.
I'm not, because I can't tell how I do things, because teaching kids is, all my students are afraid to teach kids, or at least my adults. When hey,
Yeah.
you want, because they'll come assist, or I say, hey, do you guys want to assist? They're afraid of the kids. Now, I understand you're supposed to be tough on kids sometimes, and I am at times. And I think there is a military side of me, I guess, in a way, where I make them line up and I say, all right, first rank this, first, and maybe a little bit comes out in that aspect. But I would say in my younger years, when I had people that come train with me, I wasn't really doing it so much as a business as I am now.
Yeah.
So the classes were more intense and a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, during that time, I was much more intense type of instructor, very intense. So if a guy came in with an attitude that I didn't really care for very much, it was my students that been with me, they go, oh, it's going to be a long night. It's going to be rough. Right. So yeah, if I didn't like your character, your attitude and stuff like that, I wanted to make sure you did not come back,
right.
And if you did come back,
yeah.
If you did come back, I was like, okay, maybe this guy's got something.
Yeah.
So, but that was at that time. I'm not like that anymore.
Okay. So you've trained military, you've trained civilians, you've trained law enforcement, you've trained security forces, you've trained kids. Is it all the same? Is it all different? Is there a particular set of strategies that you can use that will ensure success across that board?
Well, I know when I first got out, sometimes when I started teaching, especially in the Kali, or really in just about anything, there were things that I was teaching knife tactic wise, that after I was teaching, I was like, I probably shouldn't be teaching this to civilians, because I was like, I don't know who these people are.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, for the military, it's perfect. For civilians, not so much.
Yeah.
Now, I also I trained the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive and defensive line. I've been doing that for 3 seasons now.
Okay.
So that's very different.
Right.
It's been, but I really love it. And the thing is, I'm not a football person. I don't watch football on a regular basis. If I played football as a kid, just joking around, I was no football star of any kind whatsoever, because all I did was martial arts. I sucked at everything else. My father tried to have me play baseball, and the guy yelled in the bleachers. He yelled, "This is not golf," And I was like, I'm a kid. I don't know how to play baseball. I never played it before. But when that opportunity came up, I thought to myself, okay, this is something I got to do. Yeah. And I basically, I took the Kali, and I took the military tactics that I would teach for room clearing and stuff like that, and applied it for their position, depending on what they play and stuff. And so that was very different. And it was fun. I mean, I really like it, because it brought a different aspect of teaching martial arts to athletes,
Well, so that's another aspect that you have in common with Sifu Dan all over again.
Yes. I've been very fortunate.
Have you and he ever sat down? I mean, I get you guys have to have sat down and traded like literal war stories, huh?
When I was stationed back home in Hawaii, I went to California quite a bit. I had friends in the Hawaii Air National Guard, and I used to catch little hops to California all the time. And Levon used to live out there at the time, so I was always over there, and I was always sleeping on her couch and stuff. So I would stay out there as much as I could, just to absorb whatever I could from from Guru and from the academy. Yeah. And he took me a few times with him to be his training partners on some of his private lessons. And, I would ask him questions about martial arts and stuff like that. And I never really talked too much about the military with him. Okay. But I would just ask him stuff about martial arts. And I didn't want to ask too many questions about Bruce Lee or anything like that. I just kind of wanted him to give me his side of what he thought about martial arts.
Yeah.
And stuff. I do remember one time we left the Machado Academy. We went to go eat lunch. Guru goes, Juan, what do you feel like? I said, we can go to Alejo's. I know you like Alejo's. I like Alejo's. Let's go there. We went to Alejo's. We're talking, we're eating. And then I said, I got it, Guru. I'm going to pay for it. He goes, no, Juan. I know you're in the military. You don't make much money. I got this. I was like, no, Guru. No. I got it. And so I'm sitting there, and then Guru goes, I got to go to the restroom. So he went to the restroom. After he got up, I went to go pay. And the guy goes, he already paid. I was like, how the heck you do that? So, but yeah, I remember that vividly. I was like, okay, you got me good on that one.
Yeah.
So, but when Grandmaster Leo Huron was still around, when he was at the academy, Guru would take me over to him, and I would talk to him about military and the war and that he went through. And he would tell me the stories of how they would walk in fire team wedges and stuff through the jungle, and how he came across the Japanese soldier and he fought with him. And he said how, he had missed and he got cut here. And he goes, but that was no big deal. I just cut the head. And I was like, damn, it was no big deal. I was like, okay. But talking to him about that was really neat. And Sifu Larry, a couple of times I got to see him before I got deployed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And everything. So
yeah. What I just thought of two things. Your opinion of Full Metal Jacket.
The part that I like is that's the one with the basic training, the drill sergeant and stuff at the beginning.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that movie because I like the beginning of the movie. Where they're trying to break these guys in, trying to make them soldiers and stuff. That to me is probably one of the better parts that I like the most.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I remember when we were in Iraq, my soldiers would watch that before we'd go on mission.
Yeah.
I guess they got motivated by watching it or something like that. Yeah. But the best part for me was actually the beginning of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I actually watched it in preparation for dialoguing with you. And then my little inquisitive mind did some research on it, and I found out that movie was filmed in England. It was made in England.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
If you ever watch it again, just remember that, all those scenes, everything in that movie was filmed in England.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
So, I wanted to talk to you about, because, the military training, to me, that develops the attributes that regular human beings really need. So
right.
I wanted to talk to you about your approach to teaching, because Paul Vunak is the one in the JKD clan who made the whole thing about attributes really popular, right?
Right.
So is that an approach that you use? Like, okay, I'll teach him this in order to bring that out, because I think that Bert uses that approach too, doesn't he?
Yes, he does, and I find myself teaching that way as well. I really do, because I think, I'm pretty sure if you talk to any of my students, they'll probably tell you I always mention attributes very much, Okay. And based off people's attributes and the students and the people that are there, I tell them this may not work for you or may work for you. You have to change it. And because I live close to NAS and the school's close to NAS, I have quite a few soldiers that are pilots or in the Navy that come train here, and I've had a couple Marines could come train here and stuff like that. But I really do think attributes make a difference in what you do. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't be successful, but I always tell them, depending on your attributes, some things will work for you and some things won't.
Right. Did you continue jumping out of airplanes in your civilian life?
No, the funny thing you mentioned that I was looking the other day online for free falling, and I was like, hey, this looks pretty cool. I need to go do this. It's been a few years. I mean, I haven't jumped out of planes since I retired. I was on jump status my whole career. I never got off it. Right. So I was on jump status my whole career. And so I thought to myself, this is something I want to go do. I would like to go do. I have a friend who was with me at the Ranger Department, Johnny Carter. We used to call him Jay, but he was my training partner when we were doing the combatives and stuff. And he does a lot of skydiving. So I thought to myself, I want to go skydiving. I haven't done it or, you know, jumped out of a plane in quite a while. And it just, for some reason, it's calling me.
So if you went over to a drop zone, would you have to do a tandem as your first jump, or would they just like graduate?
I'm pretty sure I probably have to do a tandem, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, because military, you have Halo, which is, you know, the military form of skydiving. But then you have, when it comes to like the 101st and stuff, mass tack jumps or exits, it's static line jumps. So the static line is basically, it's hooked up on the cable on the plane, and people are going out, and the chute should open up, it gets pulled out, and it deploys. So yeah, I mean, if you've seen Band of Brothers, which is awesome, and any type of movie like that where they do that time, those are static line jumps. And they actually do that at the location that I was checking out as far as going skydiving. They actually have like what they call the Round Parachute Club. And they actually do static line jumps as well. So I want to go check it out. If I do, I'll let you know. You can come. You can come with.
So now, what is there anything? I don't know if you're allowed to say. Is there anything about the military that you would change, that you wish they were doing differently, even like back then or even today?
You know, the military is probably, and it doesn't really matter what branch I would say. I was in the Army, so I reference the Army more than anything. The military is probably one of the most, or out of all the organizations, no matter what type of employers, because really they're an employer just like anybody else, because you're working for a company. They're always trying to constantly change and improve one way or another. It may not always be the best, but they're always trying to change and improve, you know, being for male soldiers or female soldiers, you know, they're always trying to find a way to improve everything, being the gear that we carried to the method of deployments, the way we train our soldiers, the way we lead our soldiers. They're always trying to figure out a way of doing it better. So, you know, at the time, I could probably sit there and say, oh yes, you know, this was what I would change, but it's been so long. I mean, in my opinion,
that sounds Jeet Kune Do to me, though.
It really is. I mean, it's very Jeet Kune Do. I mean, when I was at the Ranger Department in charge of the combatives program, I went with, I took myself and some of the guys that were part of the training team to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And we did the Marines line training, hand-to-hand combatives program that they had. First Sergeant Grenier was my first sergeant at the Ranger School. And when we were Ranger instructors there. And I told him, I said, I think it'd be interesting if we went to this program, because we were trying to improve the combatives program, what we were doing, and rewrite the manual at the time. So I went there with some of the guys, and they actually, the Marines were the only one at the time that actually had a combative school for their soldiers. You know, they were the only ones. And the very first day, everyone lined up across from someone, toe on the line. You couldn't move that front foot, and you had a box. No headgear, just gloves, mouthpiece, toe to toe, go, start swinging. Don't back off the line. It was like brutal. I mean, people were just trying to swing for the fences. And I was like, this was crazy. But I liked the way the concept that they had, because it made sense. You know, the soldiers carrying equipment and how to use hand-to-hand combat with your equipment on. It made sense to me. And I was like, why don't we have this in the Army? So when we left that program and went back to RTB, I remember talking to First Sergeant Grenier about it and saying, look, we need to develop a school for the Army where leaders can come in and do hand-to-hand. We teach them a program, and they can go back to their units and actually train their soldiers and certify their soldiers this way. That was actually the starting blueprint for the combatives program, or the combative school, back at that time when I was there, back during '96, I would say. First Sergeant Grenier and myself, and everything. But when it came time, I got tired of being there. I wanted to go back to home to Hawaii. I was like, I'm ready to go somewhere else. But, you know, the combative school now in the Army is so huge, and they've done a great thing. But I sometimes think it's a little MMA for me, in a way. And it's a good thing and a bad thing, I think. And the special operations community, they've developed their own combative program upon what the Army did.
Okay.
But I still have all my notes and stuff, because the way I wanted it done was pretty much how they veered to now. Because at first it was just Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. That's all they wanted to do.
Right.
And I was like, you can't do that in military gear. You know, if you got your body armor and all that stuff, you're not going to be getting in the guard or anything like that. Yeah. And I'm not putting it down. I think it's great. It's needed. You have to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, you've cross-trained in many different things. You know what needs to be done and doesn't need to be done. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a couple of acronyms, and I wanted to appear intelligent, so I just nodded my head. What's NAS?
I'm sorry? I'm the Naval Air Station over here. The Navy unit. Yeah, in Jacksonville.
I should have that. All right. What's RTB?
RTB is the Ranger Training Battalion in Fort Benning.
I was just testing.
I'm surprised I still remember.
Okay. All right. So a couple more military things. Green Berets. Who are they? What do they do?
Well, that's the Special Forces side of the house of the Army. You know, because the Army, you have the Ranger community, which is you know, within the Special Operations community. Mm-hmm. But then you have Special Forces, which is the Green Berets. And then you have another proponent of Special Operations, is a little bit darker side of the house, you know. And so if you look at the Navy, they have the Navy SEALs, you know. Marines have Force Recon. Okay. You know. And so the Army has a larger scale of special operations than any of the other branches. But again, the Army is a lot bigger than the other branches as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And in that movie Taps, why are they wearing red berets? What was that?
Well, that was really just because of the school that they were in. They wore berets. I mean, it didn't really mean that they were any type of airborne unit or anything. But it's very common if you're in an airborne unit like the 82nd, or if you're on jump status, you wear a maroon beret. That's the color of the beret that you wear. So yeah, and then in the Ranger Battalion, we used to wear the black berets, and then they changed it over to the tan berets. And the black berets went to the regular Army for a short period of time, for a while of time. Mm-hmm. And the green berets are Special Forces. Yeah. So.
Have you, in your traveling around in airports and what have you ever come across any of those, I forget what they call them, but the guys who dress up in military uniform but are not really military?
You know, I've seen one or two here and there, and now that I'm out, I really don't say nothing to them.
Okay.
You know, because I don't know. I mean, if it was blatant right there, I mean, maybe I'd say something. When I was in the military and I saw someone doing something like that, I definitely would say something to them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, it's funny because as a young NCO, a young sergeant in the military, I was very, I would say, in a nice way, hardcore. I just really was always yelling and getting into people's stuff and everything. Yeah. As I got older, I was like, okay, you know, hey, pin's mightier than the sword. You know, I don't need to do all that. So I think as I got older, I look at stuff and I was like, okay, so he's wearing that, true, this guy, but how's it affect me? You know, I mean, if he didn't have that on, he can always say, yeah, I'm a veteran. No one would ever know. Mm-hmm. They were just taking his word. So, yeah, I mean, does it bother me? Yeah, it bothers me, but what's it going to do for me, really, in the long run? Yeah. You know, cause something where we may get in a fight or something like that. I don't need all that. So, yeah.
So do you think that you might retire in Hawaii?
That's the plan.
It is. Huh?
Yes, the plan. The plan is to go back to Hawaii. Definitely. I mean, you know, that's what I want to do, or at least towards the West Coast.
Okay.
Jacksonville is still the South to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad place. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can always head south. But you know, my schools, it does well. I don't advertise very much.
Yeah.
I don't try to blow it up to get tons and tons of people. I'm like, hey, you know, if you come in, you have a great attitude, you know, you can train here, you know, that's great. You know,
Yeah.
if they don't like what I teach or have to offer, then that's okay. There's other places you can go train as well.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't bother me either way.
Yeah. So would you say that, because you've alluded to it, but would you say that you have had to change drastically in your approach to life, or were you always fairly well balanced?
Well, that's kind of hard to answer that question. That's I wouldn't say I was always. I don't even feel like I'm fairly balanced, to be honest.
Oh,
You know, I've always recorded myself training.
uh-huh.
I mean, always. I've got so much footage of training and me teaching classes
Uh-huh.
for for years and years and years. I mean, you name it, I have it.
Yeah.
But I'm my worst critic.
Yeah.
I criticize myself, and I don't like to put stuff out there.
Okay.
I don't really like to put stuff on Facebook. I've done it maybe once or twice.
Right.
But I remember Amy Tucci, she came out to Fort Benning, Georgia, and trained with me for like about a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she flew in from California at the time. She was staying in California. She flew in and she trained with me. And she told me, you should do videos. You should do a DVD. And I was like, no, I suck. You know, like there's no way I'd want to do that. But I mean, that's the part that's hard for me to try to get out and push out. So I guess that's kind of like a balancing act. Should I do it? Should I not do it? You know,
Right.
I know we need to get it out there.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there are people out there that are saying that they are teaching this and really it's not the right thing. But I think a part of me is like, well, let them do their thing and I do my thing, and that's fine.
All right. Well, look, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you doing this for me.
No problem, man. Anytime.
Right. And yeah, and we'll visit it again. I didn't want to talk too much military, but I really oh, you know what? I thought of something else.
What's that?
What do you do to stay? Because you've never given up on history, have you?
No, I really enjoy history. I love it.
Yeah. So apart from the History Channel, what do you do to keep up to stay up on history?
You know, I mean, I still buy books.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start reading, but I'll read like a little bit here,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit there.
Yeah.
Or I kind of look through the books to find what's the most interesting part for me. And honestly, I go back and I look at all the footage, private footage I have with training with people, and even then just listening to them talk.
Yeah.
Or look through notes that I have.
Yeah.
And I find things that I'm so surprised that I still have. I was like, it just really surprises me. And I actually opened up my the Philosophy of Jeet Kune Do by Guru Dan, the book.
Uh-huh.
I opened it up yesterday. I haven't opened it up. The last time it was open, the front cover was open. Guru signed it after I retired. And
Wow.
he said, you're finally out. He said, you're finally out. Enjoy life now. That was the last time it was opened.
Yeah.
But I opened it yesterday and I was reading through there. And it was just so interesting just to read some passages here and there. And I was trying to open it slowly because I was like, it's a rare book.
Right.
You know, but yeah, I mean, I like the military history very much. I think I'm in love with the World War II history more than anything.
Yeah.
Because really martial arts had such a huge part, and I would say the Filipino martial arts had a huge part in it. Mm-hmm. That I think probably what attracts me more about it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. Right. I really appreciate it. We'll do it again. I'm gonna go through the comments and see what everybody had to say about you.
Oh my God, now I'm scared.
But yeah. All right. So listen, best regards, man. Take care.
No, thank you, man. And I'll let you know when I go jump so you can go with me.
All right. Sure thing.
All right, man.
All right.
Take it easy.
All right. So that was the episode 16 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues with Juan Diaz. Great guy. Gosh, I have such a good time, catching up with all my Jeet Kune Do colleagues. All right. So continuing with the unlimited in what we're doing. On Monday, Labor Day at 3 p.m., we'll be talking with Anthony Fontana out of Unlimited Martial Arts in Brooklyn. And so you guys come see us then, and enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you soon. Take care.